Now I'm going to show you the very simplest way to start. It has downsides, and by the end of the video or in the next video I'm gonna make it much prettier. But it's important to know you need to start simple. It's important to know how to start. And before I start, please make sure you know the project very well. That is, read it enough times, that could be 3 or more times, to know what this is about, and don't watch this video without knowing what the project is. Okay, so for the project, it's important to remember that some of the requirements does not need to be taken literally. Like there is a requirement for a certain number of rooms. Instead of rooms, you can have castle and pirate ship and whatnot. In every room, there should be things to do. I would say 4 different things to do is fine. If you have a castle, then you can train with a knight, you can talk with a knight, you can search for a sword or some other feature that you need, or you can get advice on how to proceed to win a game. And at least some of these activities should result in changing your stats. And changing your stats from the point of view of programming means changing the values of your variables. So you will need to have some variables. So the simplest thing, as long as you were fine to loops, including loops, the simplest thing you can do this. So the topic of my game will be go into classes or whatever you do in your life that will hopefully allow for like 5 things to do. I'm implementing only one, attending CTEC 102. So this will happen in a while loop. So the purpose of this while loop is to let the gamer to keep playing for as long as they want, or before they win, until they win. And first of all, there is an action variable. If action is 0, that means to quit. Other actions will have other meanings. I'm implementing only one here. Now, inside, if you chose action 0, then goodbye. And if you chose action 1, this is where the CTEC 102 will be implemented, whatever the game will be, whatever the features of this CTEC 102 will be. Notice that I have a pass statement here. That is to avoid Python throwing an error because I did not really implement this yet. So all I did a while loop. And here is my if statement, which can end up very long for you since you will have multiple rooms there. And another thing I decided to do right away is a winning condition, which is way too basic to be a winning condition for real. So you might do and this and that and more and so on. And if extra credit is true, you won. And notice this little break statement. If you want more detail about break statement, this is one other way to exit the while loop. So break will break the innermost loop in which the Python sees it. So yes, this program does not do anything. It does not change values of variables, but it has some necessary structure that is while loop. And also I defined variables. So name, this is like a knowledge index, how much the player knows, and extra credit, default false. This will be true or false. And hence, since my extra credit is actually a boolean, I don't have to do this explicit statement. I can shorten it to that, because extra cred will have boolean value, which is what we want for the condition anyway. And this is like very, very basic. You know that I did not use anything so far beyond chapter 4. So as long as you're fine with loops and understand why we use them, you can do this much. Now notice that at this point, actually maybe it's a good idea that I run this first and I show you how it works. It does work. I checked it. So enter name, then there is choose action. So if I do 1, nothing will happen because I did not implement anything to happen over here. And if I do 0, I quit. And for example, I wanted to specifically check the extra credit condition. So I can change this to true for now and rerun. So rerunning. So say I want to do 1, and immediately it does not do anything in 1, but it checks the extra credit and then breaks because I won. I just changed the value of the variable right away for that. So the point of this check, inside every iteration of the while loop, however many those will be, there will be a check if the winning condition is already true. And in that case, it breaks the loop. There are other ways to do it, so if you can think of other and better ways to do it, feel free. Alright, that was the first version. Now I saved it as a new file, so at this point I saved it as PyProjectStarter1, and this is the next version. I developed it for a tiny bit more, so you can see, hopefully this is exactly the same, except for now I did something inside the action equals to 1 that is CTEC 102. So the code that describes what's going on in CTEC 102 is currently this code. So choose room action, 0 to quit the room. Maybe I should be more explicit for that. And if your print statement is too long, you can make it into 2 lines, or as many lines as you need, and eventually you will. So one is quit, another is talk to Vlad, 2 is learn, and 3 code. Maybe I'll simplify this a little bit. You will have to work a little harder on each of your rooms than this, but okay, this is still a good example. So our action is the room action variable, and depending on the room action, for example, if room action is 1, then it is just talking to Vlad, and Vlad says blah 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 loops, blah 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 dictionaries, and some of your activities to do can be just for your game can be just understand something, how to finish the game faster and win it, or maybe some storytelling in game. Don't get carried away with it until your game is doing well and is satisfying all the requirements. Then you can be a little more verbose. However, you need to know that I'm not given too much grade for just printing statements and them being very descriptive or ornate. I want to see you change the values of variables, and I want to see you be able to implement features. So I need to have just about enough information about the game to understand what's going on. So far, I have an R action 2 that is learn, and when you learn, your knowledge variable increases by 1. And it says you learned a little bit today. And it still checks the same extra credit condition. So the only new part, as far as I remember, was just this. Okay, let's make sure it runs, and as we do that, we will see the downside of this code, the downsides of this code, and so far, again, I'm not using anything advanced. And you can keep on doing the code, writing the code in this way and debugging. All right, let me run with this code. Okay, enter name v, choose action, attend 1, talk to Vlad. Vlad is saying blah blah blah, and enter action 2, and notice right away that after you choose one thing in the room, you chose one thing in the room, and this thing executed, it kicked you out of the room automatically, which is a little bit of a downside to keep in mind. Maybe you want to enter a room and do more than one thing at a time there. That would save some time winning the game. Alright, so my next action is actually choosing the room. I have only one room, so I'm gonna enter it again. Learn. And is there anything to earn extra credit? No, there is nothing, it's not implemented. So the big deal here is the following. Let me quit, and we quit. So the big deal is the following. First of all, I see no way of finding out my stats. So did anything happen when I learned something? Did any of my stats increase? And of course, I still need to implement the extra credit thing. All right. So those are two important things. And now the important things, as you are doing this, and so far my program is just one very, very long code, and as you will be adding many things to it, and again, don't forget to save newer and newer versions under different names, this will be very unwieldy and very hard to debug or test. So in the next iteration, I will unleash the full power of functions. And as you know, this will also give you a refresher for what the functions are, and that will be helpful for the final test. Well, the other thing that we will have to do in the end of the semester is a final test. So use this as a refresher, this very code for refresher chapters 1 through 4. And this could be your weekly project, for example, for chapter 4. And we are going to remember functions and start working with functions here. After a little bit, I'm in the middle of refactoring my code. I actually saved the missing part, if you care to see it, right here in a different file. So I have a main where my main logic of the game will be. I will ask for variables. Of course, I could refactor it in a different function, and as your number of variables you are using will increase, you will want to do it more, and that's natural as long as you know how to do that. If you generate it in a function, you will have to return it, and you will have to have like comma separated sequence of name, nose, and extra credit and so on equal to the whatever the function returns. So now we have the same while loop, and the only difference I'm making, instead of just the code that was there, I'm doing CTEC 102. Now I'm calling a function. To call a function, I need to make sure this function is actually changing the variables outside, name, nose, extra credit. And I cannot change it inside the function and simultaneously change it outside the function, because if I have them inside, there will be local variables. I don't want to use global statement there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pass them as arguments, and I'm going to return them later in the function. So the way to do it, the simplest way to do it, of course, as this is what we are busy with, doing things in the simplest way, only knowing things 1 through chapter 5 now. So now we can use functions. So I'm passing all these functions, all these variables inside my function as arguments inside my function, and I will return them and update the value. So that way my functions name, nose, extra credit, and I don't know, I'm not updating action, I don't need to. All these variables will be updated after we do something with these variables inside a function. Okay, so all remains, what remains to do is to write this function. And the benefit of this, of course, that we will be able to debug and develop CTEC 102 separately and then test it before that we test main, and then we can test the main. So as soon as you are writing a longer program than just 15 lines, this is what you want to do, something like what you want to do. Okay, so this is my function, and my code from the other file goes there without any changes. I want to realign this. Oops. Sorry. Okay, let's see if it works. So I have an indentation problem here. Yeah, of course. This has to be all indented. All right, let's try again. Okay, so it somehow said done right away. Ah, that's because this was not indented. Here we go. Now let us run this again. So I would want to debug each function separately, starting from this one. Let me restart the idle so that we don't have any previous data in there. CTEC 102, name will be a string. That will be a variable in integer, and that will be false. Oh, I forgot to type up the full name. Okay, so that's how you can debug or test each function separately. Okay, one. And the function immediately kicks me out because it's just a linear code. There is an if statement, but as soon as the appropriate option is worked, so the appropriate code is worked, there is no way to come back. So if you don't want to be kicked out of the room as soon as you do one thing there, you might want to do another while loop, and for clarity, use another variable, not action, like R action can be your other variable actually, and write a while loop that would allow you to loop around and do multiple things at once, like pump your knowledge by a few points. Okay, and the rest of it should work just the same. And again, don't go on until you debug it. Run. Let me call main, their name v, and choose to go to 1. Unpack non-iterable object. So let me think for a moment about this. Yes, of course. It's much easier to think when you are not speaking at the same time. So I forgot to do a return statement. That's what's going on. So I took these arguments and I never returned them. So that's what I ought to do. Technically speaking, this is parameters, abstract variables. They are not the same as these ones, which are specific variables created earlier in the main. And when we call them, these variables, when we call the function, these variables identify with these variables. So maybe these two names should be different for clarity, for you remembering what the functions are. So let me change that. So this was the only variable I was changing inside this room. So let's just copy and paste, and all seems to be okay now. So this is actual arguments, actual variables that we have created earlier. They are passed for parameters in this function. This is abstract variables, and that's what's happening to them. One of them is increased by 1, and then it's returned to be name, nose, and extra credit again. So this is a so much better design, and if you don't see it now, you will see when you have 5 functions like this, each of which should be longer because there got to be more things to do. And maybe just for fun, I'll implement one more thing here. All right, one little upgrade. I created the way to do the extra credit. It's kind of cheap, so maybe I should think a little more. And it's a great way to introduce the puzzle. So if you answer some question, then the extra credit should be true. All right, I created a little bit more interesting puzzle answer. So your question will be, which class do you like best? The answer will be input in the next line. You will input the answer in the next line. And if answer is CTEC 102, extra credit equals true. And okay. There should be some printing statements explaining what's happening, but I'm going to go ahead and debug this. Maybe it's better to do it from a clean run. So let's run CTEC 102 and name again, then knowledge, and then extra credit is false. So that should run it correctly. And I want to earn extra credit. So which class do you like best? CTEC 102, obviously. And that way, we see as a tuple, we see the values that have been returned. So the value has been changed to true. So that's what we wanted. And we can rerun the main again and see that now my winning condition is going to catch the change in the variable, and that way I will win the game. Enter name, attend, learn, then attend, and earn extra credit. Type in the answer. Please make answers relatively simple so that I don't have to look in the code when I'm reading your project to figure out what the answer was. And yes, so as soon as I change the variable extra credit, which I did inside my function over here, when I answered the puzzle correctly, then this if condition catches that in the end of the same iteration. So I feel like I have done plenty in terms of satisfying the requirements in this very, very basic way. So if you are only comfortable with chapters 2 through 5, including, you have a very nice way of actually doing everything for this project. And that's it for this video.